This episode of the AI XR podcast is brought to you by our friends at Zapper. If you're in the XR space, you've probably felt the pain of juggling different tools, vendors, and platforms just to get an AR or VR project off the ground. It's exhausting, and it can really slow you down. That's where Zapper comes in. They built a complete suite of tools and creative services all under one roof to make creating immersive experiences not just possible, but practical. Their next-gen 3D web tool, Mattercraft, is a game changer for building immersive experiences for headsets, smartphones, and AR, VR, and WebXR. It combines the power and flexibility of the 3JS rendering engine with a rich visual editor, making it super intuitive and easy for designers and developers to use. Put simply, you get the creative freedom of a powerful 3D engine with none of the headaches. So if you're ready to take your immersive projects to the next level, head over to Zapper.com and see what they can do for you. The guest segment of the AI XR podcast is sponsored by the new Luma series of Vichur XR glasses. Vichur is the quiet giant of video smart glasses, preferred by gamers and #1 in U.S. sales. The expanded 52-degree field of view shows me a virtual 152-inch screen. For the best in mobile gaming and entertainment, go to luma.vichur.com or Amazon and get yourself a pair. Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink with Ted Shilowitz and Roni Abovitz for the AI XR podcast. It's Friday, July 25th, 2025. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning, Charlie. Morning, Ted.
Welcome to show 250.
Woohoo! Big milestone.
We have a fantastic guest to celebrate with us, Bilawal Sidhu. He was the AI programmer at TED this year. He's an ex-Google Maps product manager. So he's been working in spatial computing for some time, and he is an incredibly prolific writer about AI, particularly cinematic AI. Over 1.5 million people follow him on social media. He's very influential and very knowledgeable and a friend. So that's going to be a great conversation.
Yeah, his perspective should be really fascinating, especially with all that's going on currently.
Yeah, and I mean, he's working with 816Z. I mean, he really is in the middle of everything.
Right.
Kind of a slow and weird news week. Trump signed 2 orders relevant to my beat. The first, of course, is no surprise. There won't be any regulation of AI, at least during his term. And another anti-woke thing that said that all the AI models need to comply with some standard about anti-wokeness, which basically means they're going to force the companies to train the model on a certain version of history.
Yeah. And
that doesn't make any sense. I mean, if you think about it, if you have allegiance to the Constitution and a sense of ethics in your company, and you understand your audience, you're not going to do that. If you're in this temporal insanity bubble, and you already had malintentions, then this just frees you to run down your malintentions. But if you are like, you believe in this country and its existence and the Bill of Rights and Constitution, all that, you're not going to let like a momentary noise blip change your view of the last few hundred years of our forward progress. You're not going to take all these steps backwards. So it's basically about individual companies and founder and leaders conscious. Like if someone says you could do something bad, that doesn't mean you should. You know what I mean? I think people, like, if you have that tendency, he's just unleashing it. But if you were already aligned in a different way, you're not going to do that. So it's really a test of who you are. You don't have to follow that nonsense. It's like the Constitution is like equal rights. There's the Bill of Rights. I mean, there's all these things that already fought over the Civil War. This is like complete nonsense that's going on right now.
He who controls AI controls the past. He who controls the past controls the future. So I think this is part of a much, much broader effort to turn black into white and down into up.
And in a world where the world is upside down and the crazy just keeps getting amplified, I think we've had, in my opinion, and certainly many others around our media sphere, the ultimate takedown from our friends Matt and Trey at South Park, sort of leaning right into this story, and the timing couldn't be better. It was really more a self takedown of the CBS Paramount settlement that then became the ultimate Trump. If you're going to be this crazy, the only crazy we can do to out crazy you is do full South Park crazy. And it is fantastic, full South Park crazy, leans into AI perfectly, delivers the message of understanding how ridiculous this idea of what that administration is sort of proposing, and leans into it perfectly. And unless you've lived under the biggest technology rock in the world this week, the last couple of days, if you haven't seen that South Park episode and all the media reporting and covering it from mainstream all the way to online to bloggers and et cetera, it is phenomenal in terms of its level of understanding.
It is very naughty. My wife watched it 4 times. I heard her laughing across the house.
Do you know that the South Park guys, Matt and Trey, have backed an AI company?
Yes.
Which AI company is that?
I'm trying to remember the name. They back an AI company that does deepfake videos.
Yes.
And I've been on Zoom calls where with some of the folks from that company, and like Charlie was suddenly turned into Brad Pitt or anyone you want. Really, really well done.
Yeah, I'm blanking on the name of it. We can do a quick look, and I'm sure all listeners know. But
it's very one of my friends introduced me to him. But like they wanted to make a whole movie where they effectively were that you could just cast anyone they want under some kind of like comic license. But it was like all of a sudden you're talking to Brad Pitt and then like Madonna and then Reagan, or it was just like boom, 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 and they just nailed it. And so I don't know where they're really going with that, but
they're working on a show, like an episodic thing with it, and yes. It's fascinating. But just this moment in time is something to really be aware of. Like what the guys that know how to make this stuff, really resonate with people globally, have just stuck the landing perfectly, as far as I'm concerned.
But here's the thing, like. The truth always comes out. Like physics is physics, and no amount of like nonsense that you don't believe in it, you don't believe in climate, it's still going to burn cities. It's still going to flood. There's nothing you could say on the internet that stops it. There's no amount of lying about reality that's actually going to change actual reality. And in the end, enough people over time will realize the complete nonsense and like this has happened for thousands of years. Right. There's some king or dictator that like tries to create this moment of hypnotic nonsense around a population. It always ends badly.
Yeah.
Like it's never ended well. It's always ended in a horrible disaster with all kinds of bad things. Nero and Rome burning and Mussolini hanging upside down. And it's just like nobody learns from history. So if you kind of make up fake history, real history catches up and eats it anyway. I mean, right. I don't know why they think it's going to be any different. It's like a form of insanity.
And they just had the most delicious meal ever this week. Between that and the Stephen Colbert getting let go and killing late night, that of course became this other bubble. But the name of the studio, Roni, is called Deep Voodoo.
Correct. Correct.
Deep Voodoo is Matt and Trey's deep fake company.
Which is kind of awesome.
So UC Riverside just announced a system they had developed, by the way, with Google to do deep fake detection. So that's probably coming to social media where anything made with AI will be labeled as such. And it'll be hard for the makers to hide it. I'm sure they'll figure out a way, but it'll be hard for a while for them to hide it. So that's coming to a browser near you soon. Let's talk about one more thing and then bring in Bilawal. It's Gixel, a company you guys know well. So I'll let you do the talking about it. They just came out of stealth with a $5 billion seed round, and they've got apparently a new design for AR glasses.
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
Sure. When we report on the news, I thought there was some kind of line where you're not supposed to be the news, but I guess in this case, Roni and I are a little bit of the news. This is something I've been heavily involved in and excited about. In fact, you read the press release, Charlie, so you see that I'm mentioned in the press release talking about how excited I am about the technology.
You're the news, Ted.
What's that?
You're the news.
I'm the news a little bit, yeah. Roni, well, Gixel's the news, and I just happen to be part of it. Roni actually introduced me to Gixel. He was so excited about this style of building an optical engine that he said, you need to really take a look at these guys, help these guys. They're really doing something interesting. That was, I don't know, about a year ago. And I saw it. Some other people that are interesting in our industry, some other, investors, and like Brendan Uribe and others across. And then they were invested by a German technology arm called SprintD, which is like an incubator at scale for companies that come out of Germany that are working on really interesting things. And a lot of people that track sort of deep tech and media know this company called the Fraunhofer Institute, and a lot of like very key media components like MP3 and a lot of compression engines and sensors and stuff come out of Fraunhofer Institute. So Germany has a culture of bringing innovation to life this way. So they got investment from them, and then I helped them, and they got a number of other people help them, and now they're just out of stealth. So last week they reported, and you reported on it, and a couple others. Our friend Tony at Scarred Ghost did a great write-up because he's seen the technology, and it's exciting little step forward. So they have a new website and stuff, so you can check it out. Pixel, like Pixel with a G.
But they need to sell that technology to somebody else who wants to make glasses, right?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's one of the strongest paths. It either gets acquired or it gets OEM'd into lots of different solutions.
Right.
But in today's tech world, you guys know the story. Usually, if one of the tech giants wants it, their goal is a prevent strategy. Their goal is not a share the wealth strategy, right? So
I'll tell you what got me excited, and I think, for the XR side of our viewers, I'll dance the line here. Ted will understand the dance. But we had many simultaneous efforts at Magic Leap about Gen 3, Gen 4 sort of things. And when I saw the Gixel guys, it was reminiscent of things that were going on that unfortunately kind of got crushed in the, in the pandemic transition. But the direction they're on was one of a set of viable paths as to how do you actually get to super wide field of view and real scale. And I thought what they were doing was very clever. I'd seen things like that before, but it was good to see a group sort of independently in a different part of the world figuring out the physics with a similar conclusion. And that's why I knew right away, like, this is one of the paths up the mountain.
Yeah, I'll tell you what's interesting about them is compared to a lot of startups that we're involved in and touch and talk about, these guys are a serious engineering company. They are not a startup that's trying to build buzz or build something beyond what their core is really. They're really working on a core technology that's going to be a requirement if we ever want the glasses that are now starting to go to scale using AI and audio to have some sort of visual component. And it's exciting to see their forward progress. So, it's fun to be involved in it.
So Bilawal has just joined us. Great to see you, and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here, gentlemen.
How do you get the gig of programming the AI section of TED? Is that just like the best gig ever?
The timing was, it worked out beautifully. I had left Google, and last minute, a very high profile speaker who will be unnamed in this conference dropped out of the AI section. And so I was given the task of, hey, do you want to come give a main stage TED talk in 3 days? And so I said yes. I was crazy enough to do that. It went off beautifully. And that led to me doing the TED AI show with them and then eventually coming on as their technology curator.
Great.
Pretty cool gig. I love your background. You got the fire going on. It's like,
it's cozy vibes.
I got the same mic. You got the good mic. So got the vibe happening.
Well, so Bilawal is a professional podcaster. How many episodes have you done?
25 episodes so far.
25. Okay. So this is our 250th episode.
Y'all are the OGs. We can't do this comparison, right?
We're still learning how to do it. We have technical disasters every week. It's kind of remarkable.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the comments on the Apple podcasts, my favorite one is, for three guys who know everything about tech, they know nothing about recording podcasts.
It is true.
It's cool. We'll have an AI agent that will solve all of this for us very soon, right? Like, is the mic connected, and the various metaverse of video chat and recording apps?
That is a topic that you kind of accidentally brought up that we should explore more on the show, because agentic AI, I keep trying it, and it is utterly incompetent. But if we go back to the distant days of 2022, that's what I used to say about ChatGPT. So presumably these agents are going to get better and better. But right now, your mileage may vary.
At this point, it's sort of our brand to be a little messy about all this stuff.
Well, it is going to be messy, right?
Yeah.
Life on the bleeding edge, baby. Gotta bleed a little bit, you know?
So tell us about a little bit about your background. What led you to now this current gig, investing and being part of the TED AI coalition? That of course makes sense that TED is trying to figure out how to build a narrative around this that will help people grasp it, right? But where did you come from? What are the steps, even pre-Google? I mean, I know we want you to talk about Google, but how did you get to that stage and then hop past that?
Yeah. I would say my journey started early. Like when I was a kid, I got into Flash at the age of 7. And then at the age of 11, I saw this TV show called Mega Movie Magic that showed like digital compositing for the first time. Sure. And this is like an episode featuring Rob Bretto that you may know, like for Independence Day. And I was like, wait, the same computer I'm using for like dorky vector animation, I can create stuff that's indistinguishable from reality. And so that got me deep into visual effects and sort of like blending the physical and digital world. And of course, despite getting into my like dream school USC, I ended up studying computer science and business. And around the time I was graduating, the mobile era was sort of popping off. And so I was lucky enough to end up in the emerging technologies group of Deloitte Digital at the time, which was an agency that Deloitte had purchased, and got to jump headfirst into like Google Glass, DK2 projects, stitching 360 video. And all these type of things, IoT and sort of wearables were the best buzzword back then, if you remember. And that, of course, led me to go to Google, where I had a chance to do a bunch of really cool things. The Cliff Notes version is started off on the capture side, so working on the Jump and VR 180 camera systems.
Oh, yeah, I was involved in that early days. Yeah, sure. Good
times. And produced a bunch of content for YouTube VR, which was a lot of fun. Live streamed Coachella, Teen Choice Awards, Elton John, a bunch of cool stuff like that. That led me to augmented reality. Then AR was sort of the wave, worked on AR Core for a bit. And then eventually I kind of got like tired of waiting for spatial intelligence to pop off. If y'all remember, in like, circa 2016, it's like 2016 is going to be the year of VR. No, 2017 is going to be the year of VR. And then that's actually all about mobile AR now. After doing that for a little bit, I wanted a timeless vision and a mission to chase. And that led me to the Google Geo team working on a project called Map the World, where I had a chance to basically remap the world in 3D with a bunch of new fancy sensors. And then, build a bunch of interesting products and services on top of that. Launched the AR Core Geospatial API, so visual positioning for the world, and also co-founded Google Maps Immersive View and a bunch of other stuff that I'll skip over for the purposes of this.
Did some of that tech get used in the Google Earth virtual reality app, which is still one of the most important and not talked about enough applications for virtual reality? I'm curious.
100%.
It's a lot. Exactly. And so I was responsible basically for all the imagery that goes into all the Google products. And a lot of the underlying photogrammetry data sets are obviously in Earth. And I don't know if you saw the Google, I had Shahram Azadi from Google come and give a TED Talk. They teased out a VR version of Immersive View. So you can imagine, they haven't said anything, but I've got a feeling there's an update for that around the corner, perhaps timed with the Samsung headset.
All right, so I've got 2 nuggets, and then I'll let Roni and Charlie jump in, and because this is super interesting to me. Here's my first question. Have you ever seen, or did you ever have the opportunity to make or watch someone break down and cry in Google Earth? This is a question that I have for anybody that is Google Earth VR. Did you ever have that experience?
Absolutely. Like Google Earth.
I knew it.
And even Street View, right? Like when people go, they're like, oh my God, this is like my old home or neighborhood. Yes. And you see it at ground level. I mean, it's the closest thing we have to teleportation. And I can only imagine where we can take things as we keep pushing on, like, let's Gaussian splat the frickin' world. Like, what are we waiting for?
So it was just to do a little encapsulated story for our listeners. What's amazing about Google Earth and VR is when you put someone that hasn't done a lot of VR and you say, hey, let me show you Google Earth in VR. And then you take them to a couple of landmarks. You take them to Paris, you take them to Manhattan. They're like, wow, this is amazing. And because it really was amazing. Like, talk about, you were really teleporting around, and it would build it, and you would look around and you would fly around like you were Superman. Like, it was incredible. And then the next logical question that every single person I put into it would ask is, can you take me to my childhood home? Can you take me to where I grew up?
That's the first thing everybody does.
Everybody would say it. And you'd say, yes. Do you know the address? Or do you know roughly the area? Often they would call their parents if they were still alive, or, or a relative, and say, Mom, do you remember our address when I was like 8 years old? And Mom would say, yeah, it's, blah, 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 Pacific Street in blah, blah, blah city. You would type it in. It would build it in VR, and you would fly into it, and people would lose their minds. They'd be like, oh my God, there's my house. I'm getting chills just talking about it. There's my house when I was 7 years old. Oh my God, they did an addition. They put a pool in. They redid the yard, and then the waterworks. And they'd be like, they'd take off the VR headset, and they'd be like, I got to stop. And that was incredible, right?
That was one of the first things I downloaded when I first got my HTC Vive. It was a very early VR experience. And for that reason, I found it very powerful. And you could literally stride across the globe.
Yeah.
I was outside my New York apartment. At first thing, I went to my childhood home.
Yes.
And then, it was incredible. And then you want to test it, right? Oh, is it going to show me this? Is it going to show me that? And the sense of scale that it gives you is so native to VR.
It's remarkable. It was a remarkable thing. And so this leads to my second question, then I'll let the other guys take over. With all of your time under the hood in so many of these emerging technologies, all the stuff you did with Google Jump and cameras and spatial capture and all these devices, I often sort of talk about this area of technology as always potentially being exotic and potentially never going mainstream. That what these things do live on the edge of exotic behavior, not mainstream behavior. And while I think there's a desire point for it to have more mass adoption, the idea that companies are investing on a bet that this will go mainstream, like mobile phones, like laptops, might be a flawed thesis. You are maybe one of the people, because you've been in it so many years, that would have a valid opinion on that.
Ted, I go back and forth on this. There are moments where I'm like, oh gosh, like finally we have like visual language models and lightweight AR glasses, and maybe this whole like ambient AI XR thing is going to be the way most people experience this stuff. Like already you're seeing people take control of like the live camera viewfinder on Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever app of choice, and kind of using it as like, sort of the closest instantiation we have to Jarvis, to use that example. Mm-hmm. And eventually it's going to be able to take action too. So I get excited about that. But there are other times when I just almost question the value of 3D overall, like especially right now with this debate that's happening between sort of like video diffusion models as the path to like, like real world models, or sort of like something that's like an explicit 3D representation, like a scene graph, or like, 4D instantiation of that makes sense. It feels like the people who really care about 3D are either building stuff in the real world or blowing stuff up in the real world. And so I feel like that's like, basically architecture, engineering, construction, and all the public sector applications that you can think about. Who else really cares about 3D? You juxtapose that with sort of like this trend of kids growing up in, proto metaverses, like, of course, like Roblox, for example. It's so hard to freaking tell. Like, I don't know what that like application is going to be that's going to fundamentally change that user behavior. But what I think is like, there's going to be a space in place for spatial computing, the fully immersive, full bleed thing. I mean, like what Apple Vision Pro has sold, like what 300, 400K headsets tops, super expensive. Maybe they make a cheaper variant of that. Is that going to be like the equivalent of a high-end workstation? But we will have some lightweight glasses with a camera and maybe like an inline display, monocular, binocular. We could debate to death. Is that going to be like the phone replacements, and how soon? Gosh, I don't know. I think it'll be maybe more like a wearable device, like the
smartphone. The smartphone is the successor to the smartphone.
But Bilawal, can I give you? I'm going to give you a counter argument. Let's see how.
Please, I would.
Yeah, this is an interesting discussion point. I knew we're a good discussion.
It will. So I agree. Like the word 3D, because I spent too much time hanging out with this. Right now represents really bad versions of 3D. And the problem, I think, because I was fighting this for like a decade, is that true spatial reality is insanely complex. All of us have a brain that's evolved over, a huge amount of time to be incredibly sensitive to our awareness in the spatial world. And it's like retina resolution and real time and perfect on so many levels. And when you put bad, like not good 3D in front of our evolved brain, everyone has one. We care about that. And I think it's not that people don't care about true spatial reality. We just will reject like bad food that gives you indigestion, bad 3D. And I think very, 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 very hard to achieve true spatial reality. Like insanely expensive. The Vision Pro fell very short of that. Every VR system falls incredibly short. They're doing what we call 3D, but it's not this. It's not what we experience.
It's not lifelike. Yeah.
And it's like what I call like true neurologic spatial reality is so hard to achieve. It's actually harder to achieve than landing on the moon. Like the amount of money that's been spent between Meta and Apple, probably over 120 billion. I mean, Magic Leap spent like 3-4 billion, which is a tiny fraction. And like we got close, you know, like that finger with the Michael, we got like, oh my God, that's what it's like. Oh my God, that's like really far and really hard. But I had glimpses. I don't know if you've had glimpses of like what that really will be. And it's incredible.
Oh,
but
sure.
when you're given dog food, when you're given just like the crap, I think the threshold is give it to me the real thing or I won't do it. That's my take on this field. So 3D is garbage compared to what we all see every morning when you wake up. We just don't, for some reason, we could tolerate like bad audio, like mono and crappy audio on your phone. And I don't know why we tolerate that, but we do. But the visual reality, we seem intolerant of anything except for perfect spatial reality. That's why Mark will probably spend $300 billion and maybe still not get there. That's the problem with this field. It's really, really tough to get there.
Agreed. I mean, like it's worth thinking about that. Like, you know, so all of these technologies are really, 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 really cool. But I mean, it's like the world is 3D. I agree, but we already have these. And it's 3D. You know, XYZT. You know, but already we've got these 2D slabs of glass that mediate a lot of our interactions in the physical and digital world, and we're so forgiving to it. I think we do need a more intuitive form factor for sure. And when you see glimpses of the future, right? Like when you see like aerial and ground level data perfectly fused together and you can walk around with that level of fidelity at a place and you overlay like historic location data or weather data and you start figuring out like, hey, we could truly like teleport anywhere, maybe even go into the future and then have hardware devices that could like make it feel indistinguishable from reality. Like that absolutely has to be a thing, right? Like it absolutely will be. I guess it's like the timeline and like how much of a pain point it is for people, especially after so many generations of just being used to like 2.5D, like interfaces that do kind of just fine, you know? So that's where
you're the TED AI guy. Yeah. I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
So AI was a thing since the 1940s. Every decade, it's like the decade of AI, the decade of, and then it's like not. And all of a sudden Google was one of the first real scale companies employing a form of AI, and they become worth an insane amount of money. And it's like AI, nothing. And then it's like NVIDIA worth a couple billion, cool things, CNNs, GAN networks. Nobody cares. All of a sudden, like OpenAI, nobody cares a little bit. 2020, 2021, boom.
Research preview.
This was 60 years in. It's going to happen every decade, right? If you go back and look at like old films from the 40s and the artificial intelligence is kind of, so it took a certain amount of time, but now it's exploded. Yeah. So I think that's the thing people don't realize about XR and AI. There's an explosive moment. It's hard to predict. It's weird. So question for you, why did OpenAI catalyze this explosive moment? Whereas 3 years earlier, you still were largely ignored by investors and by people. Now it's like the thing on everyone's. What happened between 2018 and 21 that catalyzed it?
I mean, like, look, deep learning got good, right? And there were a lot of narrow applications. Obviously, all the big companies that were investing in this stuff were putting it into their highest priority products, right? Like, let's make search better and put BERT in it, for example. Or, let's make ranking better on Facebook, or do improved media understanding to surface the right kind of content, or do moderation or whatever. I think it's interesting with OpenAI, and we can talk about the spatial analog too, is like, 2022 was an interesting year because you had that moment where there was like DALL-E and everyone's like, oh, DALL-E, this is kind of cool. Like these images are getting sort of interesting. There was like the whole like Mid-Journey moment that sort of started happening too. It's like, oh, these things look kind of cool. And of course, it's shocking for me to go back to my Mid-Journey history and just see what those images look like compared to where we are today. But yeah, like you pointed out, OpenAI had GPT-3 in the wild, right? Like people were using a bunch of these LLM-based applications. But I think it was that open research preview, which, as you may or may not have seen on the TED AI show episode with Helen Toner, was sort of released without informing the board. This research preview wrapping GPT-3, like kind of just took the world by storm, because I think it was the first time where like people in these companies had a chance to play with like, a large language models that were internal. It's the first time anyone could do anything and query, put whatever into that magical text box and have that experience. And I think that's what captured the global consciousness is like, that this combination of like the tech being kind of good enough, but it being widely accessible so that people could play with it. And you're kind of seeing the same thing happening with like video creation today, especially with VO3 and Google really subsidizing access to image and video generation. There was a bunch of nerds like me playing with generative video, right? But in the last 6 months, creators who would have never even contemplated playing with Gen AI, the fact that they can generate like, video and audio together with a very intuitive text prompt that almost feels like you're prompting like a performance out of the model, I think is taking this far more mainstream, and you're seeing this explosion of all these various trends.
Bilawal, one thing you said about, because I follow you very closely on social media. So you posted at one point some of the videos you made in high school, which were little special effects extravaganzas that you made on your phone and with your computer. But in a way, they kind of anticipate the kind of magic that people are able to create on their desktop with AI.
Totally. Yeah. It's in a while that to like, this is like kind of pre-YouTube-ish to go like shout out Andrew Kramer, feel familiar, of course, and like Creative Cow and all these like theforce.net and FX Home and all these like esoteric forums.
So when you were a kid, you wanted to make movies.
I wanted to make fun stuff with my friends. We wanted to have like X-Wings land in our backyards. We wanted to go like take a bunch of airsoft guns and like duke it out. And yeah, just like create action movies basically was the vibe for me.
But now you can do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And anyone can do that with like, and skipping all of that crap, right? Like what it took me like a week to go do like a little slow-mo, like, explosion shot with like perfect light wrap and, rotoscoping. Now you just like friggin' put your start image into one of these video tools and just tell it, hey, have me walk away, put on sunglasses with a slow motion explosion in the background, and boom, there you go.
So is this your moment to start to pursue your movie career? Like, are you feeling what a lot of people are feeling, especially a lot of student filmmakers and folks that never had a shot to, direct and put huge amounts of dollars into making a big VFX experience? Now, everybody, we flattened that curve quite significantly, right, over the last couple of years. So is that creative muscle starting to actuate, or have you now sort of almost gone beyond it and letting other people do that, and you're sort of doing the work on top of all that?
I don't want to make movies anymore. It's like, I'm kind of like, I do enjoy making shorts. Like I like getting my hands dirty, right? Like you got to be in the sandbox playing with the tech. You can't just be talking about it. And so I'm lucky enough to build these short form channels called Billy Effects on YouTube and TikTok, over like about 1.5 million subscribers in total. And this is just like my canvas for like, I don't care about like a long form narrative. I just want to like, I learned cool new trick A, B, and C. How do I duct tape these Lego primitives together and make something dope? And oftentimes, or I should say sometimes, those things go stupid viral. And then those are the moments where, Ted, I'm thinking what you're saying is like, and people start hitting me up. I was like, hey, maybe you should like wrap some IP around this. Like maybe you should make this like, it's like, yeah. And that's, so I definitely have that. But I would say like the product itch in me is strong too. So I ended that like a lot of the advisory work ends up keeping me busy too. And so, but I like to balance it out. Like, you gotta, again, like I never enjoyed being a product manager either that like doesn't go deep and actually play with the stuff themselves. I feel like it's just, this is just the way I'm wired, I guess.
Well, but you've certainly hit upon like a sweet spot in time talking about making these little visual experiments as opposed to full narrative stories, right? Because as we very much know, people that work in the media business, spectacle often leads story, right? Like we create the understanding of the technology that can drive the spectacle that, wow, isn't that cool? Look how that was made. And then the real artisans start to dig into how do I use this in a way to further a narrative to help me tell a story. And you've touched an interesting sweet spot, which is exciting, I think, and interesting.
You're hitting the nail on the head. I kind of call it like there's the sandbox mode and the architect mode. This is where like there's so much like serendipity and kind of like it's like we're, here's a bunch of new primitives and we haven't even put it together and like put them together in the most obvious combinations. And so happy accidents happen. And then, other folks are, you can go into architect mode and actually try building something with those newfound superpowers and capabilities.
Yeah, it's like the early days of Pixar where they were like, look what this stuff can do. Look what computers can do. Yeah. But without the other side of the equation, without the guys that actually could care less about what the computers can do and how they can emote something, how they can make you feel something.
Yeah.
You don't have the magic yet. So it's almost 100%. Like we have part of the magic box, but we don't have the full magic box yet. And people are cultivating it. We're starting to see it. We referred to this bonkers South Park episode that is a perfect part of how to build an unbelievably strong narrative that resonates now globally using an AI technique, right? In a very crude fashion. Like, it's not the best AI you've ever seen by far, but it taps a nerve. These guys are story creationists. They're not technologists, right? They just happen to use a version of technology.
And social commentators too, like beautiful social commentators.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Ted, I want to get your and Bilawal's take on something. So last night I did a short video with some AI of a fish in a plastic bag struggling to swim in the ocean. And I posted it on X and I put save the earth or something. So one guy's like just ratted about AI being horrible and all that. And then another comment is like, this is an emotional story. Who cares how it got done? It was like, if you go to the X and you'll see it, it actually encapsulates this whole debate in a second. Do you really care how something got made, or does it communicate what it needs to have? So some commentators are like, it's communicating what matters. And someone was like, well, you use this tool to make it, therefore I don't like it.
Right.
In fact, they don't even know what tool I use. Like, what if I struggled for 2 weeks doing all this in like visual effects and Maya and all that? Someone else will say, well, you didn't draw it by hand if you're a Miyazaki person. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's like
if you're Christopher Nolan, you should have gotten a fish and filmed it in the ocean.
So I've said many times, the minute you start thinking about how a movie or a show was made, you're outside of the story and the filmmakers kind of lost you. So, again, perhaps for people like us, that's a professional hazard. But for regular people, for casual people looking at content on X or YouTube, I think if they're worrying about how it was made, that wasn't a very good product to begin with.
Yeah.
I had an interesting debate. I guess it was the day before yesterday. I was with Edward Saatchi, who I know some of you guys know. He's been on the show.
Yeah, he's doing this thing called Fable, which is interesting there.
Yeah. So he and I were having a conversation where there really are two distinct things going on. And Bilawal knows I'm working on a book about this. There really are two distinct things going on, right? One is the innovation, right? Now you can make $100 million movie for $10 million, or you can come damn close to it, at least below the line. And so that's an innovation, right? Special effects, the 200 people it took to do a special effects film, a year and a half to do is obviously going to be greatly reduced. So that'll be great for the film business because the economics, as is well known at this point, are kind of broken. Nobody's sure how they're going to make money. The products are incredibly expensive, which is really disappointing because it's paying people a lot of middle class living. So that's where all the money goes to that and to advertising, which may get even more expensive as the world gets more crowded. But so that'll be a good thing for the film industry. There'll be pain around it because there'll be job displacement, but new jobs will be created. And we rebalanced the industry. I mean, computers led to more films being made than ever. Then there's another thing going on, which I think is much more interesting and way more complex. And that is what I call synthetic media. That is media made by the algorithm, right? That's so what Meta is talking about for their advertisers is you give me a product and a description, and not only will I make a video advertising your product, but I'll A/B test it to optimize it as we go along. And of course, you can extend that to all sorts of content, not just advertising. So to me, it's like, yes, Hollywood is going to be cheaper and there'll be more movies and they'll be super cool. But at the same time, we're going to be competing with machines that know us.
But let me ask you a question for Charlie, Ted, and Bilawal. This happened to engineering. There used to be rooms full of people called human computers at NASA and IBM.
Yeah.
And they got replaced by computers that did advanced math and engineering. And now an engineer sits in front of like complex math tools, CAD tools, that to do the same thing, you needed like 100 human computers and drafts people. And now you just do it on Pro E or T or something and use like MATLAB. So this happened already in the engineering and math sciences. And you took those building blocks and went from building like a little car to Teslas and satellites and spaceships. We did higher order things. So why is it surprising that media should not fall to the same forces that cause engineering and science to fall? It's the same evolution.
Right.
But what's your take on that? It sounds like
the piece I would add to that is like, it's interesting, right? It's like procedural just-in-time content. It's almost changing the nature of consumption in a sense. And this also, you might argue, like Roni, that like this collision course has been happening between offline and real-time content in a sense, right? Like has been happening with just like offline VFX and, CGI workflows and then real-time engines getting better and better. But yeah, with Gen AI, I don't know, it feels like, kind of the TikTok that was made just in time for Roni 4 videos before he actually scrolls to it on his feed, based on all the signals that it's collected and inferred about you. I think it's going to be fundamentally powerful and very different, right? And I think like the analogies I've heard, which is sort of like the Bandersnatch analogy on steroids. Hey, it'll be easier to make a Bandersnatch, choose your own adventure thing, because now you don't need to capture all the variation. I think that's even just like, kind of old wine in a new bottle. How consumption itself changes when pixels are just the means for final delivery, but content itself is like disposable, just like code is becoming disposable. Like I'm not going to some shady website to download a YouTube video anymore. I'm just going to Replit Agent being like, yo, make this like YouTube downloader thing with, this like CLI for downloading YouTube videos and make a UI around it. And I'll use it whenever I want. So like, I think there's going to be something very interesting there. And I think it is interesting to think about what that, new consumption, is there going to be a net new consumption platform that originates? And how are the existing players going to sort of try and adapt around it? Like YouTube clearly is putting in VO and a bunch of these creation tools, but they're still sort of taking the creator first stance. Meta seems to be a little more adventurous with trying to create like, hey, full-blown AI influencer accounts and then unlaunching them because of backlash. Yeah. But that's just the early days. Like, where is that going to go? But I think like, consumption is going to change altogether. And it ties into 3D too, right? Like 3D is kind of a means to an end. If at the end of the day, you're just delivering pixels, do we really care if it's like a black box neural net and you can exert enough control over it?
Well, there's an interesting sort of dystopian future that'll be interesting to get you guys to all comment on.
Oh, gosh,
we all know, I presume you guys know the gray goo theory, right? Where when computers self-replicate, they will literally cover the earth with a gray goo and kill the earth, right? Kill the planet's resources. What if media is the gray goo that no one realized it was going to be, right? Pre-AI generation and creationism and synthetic media, as Charlie talked, we already have this media sphere that I think is so amazing and dystopian at the same time because of the amount of material that gets created. When you plug in a synthetic agent to now create media, is that the gray goo? Is that the thing that stops everybody from surviving? There's too much media in the world.
I got one Friday clever stupid thing to say about it, and then we should hear Bilawal. But it's actually gray gardens is what's going to happen. If you there's a famous film from 1975 about these. I think these 2 elderly women.
They made a musical out of it. They made a musical out of it.
but it's like it's just full of like a house full of garbage, and they're living in this really weird way, and that may be what happens to us. It's like gray goo meets gray gardens. But what's your take?
I mean, I'm worried about the Mountain Dew straight to the vein future for sure. I mean, like, yeah, we've got like a very crude algorithm in the middle of like human generated content and consumers on the other end, and that's already sort of like people call TikTok like fentanyl, digital fentanyl is sort of the analogy that's been made, and I mean like it. I'm telling you, I mean, it feels like that. I deleted TikTok off my phone because it's so damn addictive, right? Like it's just a short form. And YouTube, gosh, I go to YouTube, it'll open up the shorts view. Next thing you know, 20 minutes go by and I'm like scrolling and like, oh God, it's reached a place where people consider 10-minute videos long form. That's where we've got to, people. So yeah, like I'm absolutely worried about it. And people are going to build a super addictive dopamine machine for sure. I'm also excited about the positive side of this. Like I keep thinking about podcasts like this, like the personalized rendition of that, right? Like newsletters perhaps are going to be the first thing to get automated, like your news for the week. But I keep thinking about whether it's like in an enterprise context or a personal context to have like a podcast episode customized to you, what I should care about in this week is kind of powerful. And it's already pretty good with Notebook LM. I kind of use it asynchronously that way, like jumping in a couple of papers I care about, a couple of tweets that I care about, and getting like a 30-minute audio that I can listen to on a walk in like the Austin Greenbelt. And so I'm excited about both sides of that. But yeah, no doubt. I mean, like, it's like the whole brain rot culture is scary. And yeah, maybe Wall-E as a movie had it right. We'll all just be jacked into lifelike VR systems with Mountain Dew straight to the vein.
Otherwise known
that's a good
as
way to
the
close
Matrix.
it, guys.
Well, I know we're getting
Mountain
close
Dew
to the
straight
end,
to
but
the vein is a good title for the podcast.
let me direct this towards something for a moment that I think a lot of our listeners think about and be curious about. Though it'll be interesting to hear your take on this. Because you were involved at Google, and now you're involved with Andreessen Horowitz, which is really pushing the limits of stuff. When Google started to expose this innovation, when they started to expose the DeepMind stuff, and they made an ethical attempt to sort of slow their own roll, right? They sort of put the word out there that this stuff could be dangerous. We need to actually be thoughtful about it, and we need to be careful about just releasing the hounds, as it were. And OpenAI on the other side of the equation decide not just to release the hounds, but to sort of fire up and just let it all go. So there was a difference in culture beyond just the technology.
Sure.
A difference in culture. You were involved in that culture on the Google side at that moment in time, right? So do you have a sort of a perspective on that period of time with Google when they were pushing innovation, but also worried about it and struggling about it? We talked about it in the media sphere, and brain rot's a good way to. They were just nervous, right? Were you one of those guys that was nervous, or the people around you? And then on the other side, the OpenAI conundrum was they just went for it. They had nothing to lose. They were more like a startup.
I mean, it's the classic like startup versus the incumbent, right? Like the incumbent always has more to lose. And I think an interesting analogy here is like, it took me about 2 years of internal like debate, teeth pulling, et cetera, to get visual positioning system out into the wild, like actual Street View based VPS out into the wild. Because there were similar concerns about what happens if you can geolocate any imagery, right? Like with a coarse GPS prior, you can think about all the privacy implications. The Ukraine war had kicked off around that time. Right. So you can imagine some of the policy docs that I had to write and the legal reviews that I had to go through. So like, but ultimately, like, this is always what happens. The more adventurous player will sort of put something into the wild. And I would say they did it in a fairly responsible way, right? Like through an API where they can still, at least like, if there are bad actors using the system, you have some visibility into it rather than an open weights approach, which can be debated as well. But once it's out in the wild, people are like, oh gosh, it actually wasn't that bad. And actually people don't care if these models hallucinate. It makes the incumbent player far more likely to take that risk. And it's been kind of cool to see Google go from the Bard fiasco, like circa early 2023 to now Gemini 2.5 Pro, like this is one of the regular models in my rotation. So they've clearly, made that push. And in many ways, it was interesting to see OpenAI kind of slow their roll on Sora. I don't know if that was because of like the training data of like, the whole Mira Murati YouTube. Is this from YouTube, Instagram, and that whole conversation that resulted in like sort of a more distilled, slower model coming up? But that's an example where like Google almost released the state of the art before them. And it's kind of, it's like, it's a weird world because right now tanker ships are starting to move like speedboats, and speedboats are very quickly turning into tanker ships.
Really, really interesting topic. And of course, we always end at the beginning of a new topic.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody, for spending some time with us today. And we will see you next Friday. Bilawal, Always great to hang out with you.
Yeah, you
Thank
should come back again. There's much, much more to talk about. We really talk about a just scratch the surface episode.
Yeah.
This is a scratch. We didn't even talk about your investment role now and all the things that you're looking at next. That should be the next version of this discussion.
I would love to. Thank you so much for having me and looking forward to round 2.
All right. Good luck with the TED AI podcast.
Cheers. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.